The poor girl, small and shaking, a splash of red cloth against a world gone white. Emma Carter's long brown hair was a tangle of ice and wind, and her fingers, raw and reddened, kept tracing the soft creased edge of a photograph. She sat on a platform bench the trains no longer visited, legs tucked up to her chest, breath blooming into the night like moths. The photograph trembled as she held it to the faint light. A younger soldier in desert camo, smiling a little shyly, cradling a newborn swaddled in hospital blue. Emma pressed her thumb to the soldier's face and whispered through chattering teeth, "I came here to find my dad." Before we begin, let me know where you are watching from. Leave your country name in the comments below, and if you love stories about courage, loyalty, and community, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next stories. A gust slapped her, hard enough to make the bench creak. The rail yard beyond was a grey emptiness. No schedules, no announcements, only the high, thin shriek of winter dragging metal across metal. She tried to hold the photo steady, but her hands were so cold. That made her angry at her own body. She rubbed her knuckles together the way her mother used to tell her, then stopped because remembering her mother was like touching salt to a split lip. Footsteps, slow, sure, entered the station the way a promise enters a room, not loud but undeniable. A high shape took form in the white breath of snowfall, broad shoulders in a camouflage parka, the posture of a man who could read a map in the dark and feel north in his bones. The dog came with him, big, dark, quiet, padding a half step ahead, and then pausing, muzzle raised, as though catching a scent of grief. Noah Ramirez stopped when he saw her. Shadow, the German Shepherd K9, flowed forward 2 steps and then looked back, a glance that asked, rather than begged. The dog's ears tipped forward. Even in a storm, Shadow moved like something built to guard. "Hey," Noah said, voice rough, softened at the edges. He kept his hands visible and his distance respectful. A veteran learned the hard way that some children had been taught to fear. "You shouldn't be out here in this." Emma did not answer at once. She held the photograph between them like a lantern. The wind tried to steal it. She caught it with both hands and turtled over it, as if the paper could still give heat. Her eyes, wet, too big in her thin face, flicked from the man to the dog and back. Shadow took that as permission. He lowered his head and came to sit beside the bench, so close that Emma could feel the dense warmth of his coat. He didn't touch her at first. He simply was, the way a stone hearth simply is. After a beat, he inched closer, placing his big body as a barricade between her and the door where the wind knifed through. Noah drew a careful breath and eased down to a crouch, knees popping. He took off one glove to show an empty hand, then the other. A small, dented locket hung from a black cord around his neck. As he shifted, the metal flashed. He thumbed it like a man tempted to prey. "I'm Noah," he said. "And this is Shadow. You okay, kiddo?" Emma nodded, a lie her body couldn't carry. "I came here," she said, words dragging a little, "to find my dad." She held the picture closer. "I've got his face." Noah felt the ground tilt under his boots, a private vertigo. He had seen 1,000 photos in 1,000 places, wallets pulled from wreckage, corners bent by God's own thumb. But something in the angle of the man's smile in that picture tugged at a memory he kept walled up. A hospital room, a nurse laughing, a baby's weight so feather-light it scared him. He blinked hard once. "Can I—" he began and stopped. "May I see?" Emma hesitated, then surrendered the photograph the way a child surrenders a secret, reluctantly but completely. Shadow's tail thumped once on concrete, soft as an amen. Noah took the photo with both hands. The edges were velveted from years of pocket carry. The soldier in the image looked impossibly young, cheeks still holding a boy's curve. The baby's face was turned just a little toward the camera, one paper-thin fist muscling free from the swaddle. On the soldier's wrist, a paracord bracelet. On his collar, last name tab, half visible. The first 3 letters were Ram. His heart bucked. He looked up, throat tight. "Where did you get this?" Emma's mouth tried to be brave and only managed honest. "My mum's box," she swallowed. She said to come here if anything happened." Her voice went quiet enough that the snow had to lean in to hear it. "She said the trains knew how to find soldiers. She said his name is—" The dog shifted, a small signal. Somewhere out beyond the half-shuttered doors, a sheet of ice broke and clattered down, the sound carrying like distant applause or far-off gunmetal. Noah's head turned, old reflex. He catalogued, no immediate footsteps, no voices, just the feral music of a storm punching at old glass. He returned his gaze to the child. He slid the picture back to Emma, careful not to smudge the life she carried in paper. "There's a service room," he said, nodding toward an interior door where a sign hung limp from one screw. "Out of the wind. We can warm up a little. I've got a stove and some cocoa mix that lies about being chocolate." Emma blinked, calculating. The dog decided for her. He stood, did a small circle, and leaned his shoulder into her shin the way a ferry nudges a dock. She rose on stiff legs and followed. The soldier led, not looking back often, but always enough. Inside, the room held forgotten things: a yellowed timetable, a chair missing one leg, a first aid kit with only the bandage wrappers left. Noah knelt and coaxed a blue flame out of a pocket stove. Shadow stationed himself so the girl could sit, with her back to the wall and her front to the dog. He turned sideways and pressed his body along her shins like a heated sandbag. Emma's teeth stopped knocking. Noah poured water from a stainless bottle. The stove hissed, a bright sound. He reached for his locket, opened it. 2 faces inside, one fair-haired woman with a sunburnt nose, one infant with a cloud of black hair. He never told anyone how often he'd opened this in the dark to see if guilt had faded. It hadn't. He shut it fast enough to click. Emma noticed anyway. "Your keepsake?" "Something like that," he said, and discovered his voice could be gentle. She held the photograph to the stove light so he could see it without touching. "He looks like you," she said. Simple observation, no accusation. "Except younger," and smiling. Noah smiled a little, the expression feeling like a shirt from an old closet. "If your mum sent you to the station," he said slowly, "she must have known something about him. About your dad." Emma's eyes went bright with the hope that terrifies adults. "She said he was kind. He held me like I was the only thing he'd ever get right. She said his name is—" Shadow's ears snapped to high alert. This time, Noah heard it too. The gritty snow crunch of footsteps in the corridor beyond the door, hesitant, then stopping, as if a stranger had paused to listen to their warmth. The dog lifted, weight forward, not yet a growl, just the quiet shape of one built to become. Noah raised a hand, palm toward the girl. "It's okay," he said to Emma, and easy, to Shadow, the one word carrying history. He stood and stepped so that the rectangle of his body overlapped the rectangle of the door. "Could be wind," he lied, because the wind didn't wear boots. He waited. Silence unspooled, thin and tight. The footsteps did not return. The building made its old house noises. The radiators that no longer heated still clicked with ghost memory. A sign chain tapped glass like a careful knuckle. Noah breathed the air back down into his chest and looked over his shoulder. Emma hadn't moved. She was looking at him the way children look at cliffs, afraid and a little in love with the height. "What's his name?" he asked, voice softer than the question deserved. Emma lowered the photograph into her lap. She smoothed the crease that ran like a river through the soldier's shoulder. She licked lips gone white with cold. When she finally said it, the name felt like it had been waiting in her throat all winter. "Noah," she whispered. "His name is Noah Ramirez." The stove flame wavered. The soldier did too. Something terrible and beautiful tore down the wall he'd kept between his life and his losses. The locket felt suddenly heavy, as if the picture inside had leaned forward to listen. Shadow pressed against Noah's calf. Steady, here, now, and then eased back, granting space like a wise friend stepping aside. Noah's knees gave before his heart could catch them. He went down, not collapsing, but kneeling, as if the station itself had become a church and he had stumbled into the center aisle. He looked at the girl and, God help him, saw himself reflected in her eyes. Emma held out the photograph with both hands. The paper shook only a little. Outside, the storm gathered its breath for another howl. Inside, the soldier did not know yet what the next hour would require, proof or protection or penance. But he knew this. Some names call you home. The corridor whispered again. Footsteps or memory, he could not tell. Shadow turned his head very slowly and pointed his muzzle at the dark. Emma tightened her fingers on the picture and in a voice that wasn't quite a voice, asked the air, "Daddy?" The world held its breath. The little service room of the abandoned station still smelled of iron and dust, though the blue hiss of the camp stove gave it the illusion of life. Emma Carter huddled against the wall, her small body framed by the warmth of Shadow, the German shepherd, who had chosen to lie across her feet like a living blanket. In her lap rested the photograph again, bent at the corners, colors faded but stubborn. Across from her, Noah Ramirez sat stiffly on the half-broken chair, his camouflage uniform frosted with snowmelt, hands knotted between his knees. He looked like a man made of stone, carved into silence. The name she had spoken still rang inside his skull. Emma lifted her chin. "You didn't answer me," she said softly. "Your name is Noah Ramirez, isn't it?" Noah swallowed once, hard. He had rehearsed 100 denials in 100 different ways, on deployments, in cheap motels, on lonely roads. But looking at her, her wide eyes too old for 6, the way she held that paper truth against the storm, his throat refused the lie. Shadow, sensing the pause, raised his head and nosed Noah's shin, the quiet gesture a command as much as comfort. Noah scratched the dog absently, buying seconds he didn't know how to spend. At last, he exhaled. "That's my name." His voice was low, flat. But names don't prove blood. Emma hugged the photograph closer. "Mama said it was you. She said you held me once, that you smiled and called me your little star." The words were a knife, twisted in memory. Noah rubbed his palms together until heat burned into his skin. A woman's laugh echoed in his mind, a baby's impossible softness, the way he had whispered a name into a hospital room, only to lose his courage when life marched him back to duty. He shut his eyes. "Your mama told you that?" Emma nodded, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "She told me before she got sick. She said if she couldn't stay, I had to find you. Because even if you didn't know, you were still my dad." Silence filled the room like water rising. Noah's shoulders hunched. The locket at his neck, suddenly, felt heavier than body armor. Shadow shifted and stretched, placing one paw deliberately on Noah's boot, the gesture anchoring him in the present. Emma broke the stillness, her voice trembling but steady enough to cut through. "Why don't you believe me?" Noah's eyes opened, haunted. "Because believing means admitting I lost more than I can bear. If I'm your father," his voice cracked, "then I already failed you." Emma blinked, her lashes wet. "But you're here now." The dog gave a low, approving rumble, as if seconding the child's simple truth. Before Noah could speak again, a loud clang echoed through the station, a sheet of loose metal ripped free by the storm and smacked against the outer wall. Shadow leapt to his feet in an instant, hackles up, body angled toward the door. Emma gasped and pressed close to the wall. Noah raised a calming hand. "Stay still, it's just the wind." But his other hand went to the silver locket beneath his shirt, thumb pressed hard against the tiny photo hidden inside. Not a weapon this time, just a reminder of faces he couldn't lose again. Emma sniffled once and whispered, as if confessing to the shadows, "I don't care if you think you failed, I just wanted to find you." Her voice broke him more than the storm ever could. He sat back down slowly, staring at her as though seeing her for the first time. The storm outside rattled the old station like a giant shaking a toy box, but inside, silence sat heavier than the snow, piling against the walls. Emma Carter traced the photograph's bent corner with her tiny finger, careful not to rip it. She wasn't afraid of the storm. Storms had been her lullaby for weeks. What scared her was the soldier's silence. Noah Ramirez staring at nothing, his jaw set, hands clasped so tightly the knuckles had gone white. Shadow, the German shepherd, padded back from the door and curled beside Emma again. His body was a wall of warmth, his eyes fixed on Noah with a patience that only animals and angels possessed. Finally, Emma broke the quiet. "You knew her, didn't you? My mama!" Noah's head turned sharply, and for an instant the hardness cracked. He saw a face he hadn't let himself see in years. Maria, her hair always loose when the wind was strongest, her laugh a kind of music he thought he'd forgotten. She had been summer and firelight, and he had left her behind with nothing but promises he hadn't kept. His voice faltered. "I knew her." Emma's eyes brightened, and she shifted the photo closer to the stove's glow. "She said you held me when I was just born, that you called me Little Star. She told me she wished you could have stayed, but you had to go." Noah pressed his palms against his eyes. A memory pierced him. A sterile hospital room, the beep of monitors, Maria's exhausted smile as she placed a swaddled bundle into his arms. He had stared down at the tiny life and whispered, "You're my little star. You're the one thing I can't fail." But orders had come. Deployment didn't wait for fathers, only for soldiers. And by the time he returned, Maria had moved, the trail gone cold, and shame had chained his tongue. He forced himself to look at Emma again, the truth burning in his chest. Her eyes were mirrors of Maria's, soft brown with a stubborn shine behind the sadness. "I thought I'd never see either of you again," Noah admitted hoarsely. "I thought I didn't deserve to." Emma hugged her knees, voice barely above a whisper. "Mama said you were brave, even if you were gone. She told me to come find you if she couldn't stay." Noah's breath caught. "She told you that?" Emma nodded, her tangled hair falling forward. "Before she got sick, she said, 'Your daddy's out there. You'll know him when you see him.' And I did." Shadow lifted his head, letting out a soft whine, as though urging Noah to believe the child. Noah reached for the locket at his chest and flipped it open. Inside, 2 faded photographs stared back. Maria's face caught in sunlight, and a baby's fuzzy black hair barely visible above the blanket. He angled it toward Emma. This is you." Emma leaned forward, lips parting in awe. "That's me? I thought it was just a baby picture. She never showed me that one." The soldier's chest tightened until he thought his ribs might break. "I carried it all these years," he confessed. "But I didn't have the courage to find you, and now—" His voice broke. "Now you've found me." Emma reached out a trembling hand and touched the locket with one finger, her eyes shining with tears and wonder. Noah let out a shaky laugh that sounded more like a sob. "God help me. It's you." Shadow barked once, sharp and low, as if sealing the revelation. But before Noah could gather Emma into his arms, a loud bang thundered through the hall. Something heavy slammed against the outer door. Both man and dog snapped to alert. Emma gasped, clutching the photo. "What was that?" Noah rose instantly, his body soldier straight, eyes scanning the shadows. "Trouble," he muttered. Shadow's growl rumbled like distant thunder, his body poised to defend. Emma's whisper came again, trembling but unbroken. "Daddy?" Noah froze at the word, torn between past and present, fatherhood and danger. The storm outside howled louder, as if the world itself had heard her claim. The little blue flame of the stove flickered, painting shadows across cracked walls. The storm outside pushed hard against the station doors, each gust a warning drumbeat. Noah Ramirez stood near the entrance, his body squared, every nerve alive to the sound he'd just heard. Shadow's low growl filled the silence between them, a living alarm bell. Emma Carter sat small and trembling on the floor, clutching the photo like it was scripture. Her hair, tangled and wet, clung to her cheeks. When Noah turned back to her, she lifted the photo into the glow of the stove so he could see it, really see it. The paper shook in her little hands. "Look," she whispered, "it's you." Noah crouched slowly, his camouflage knees creaking, and took the picture with both hands. He held it close, afraid his own breath might tear it apart. The young man staring back from the faded image had his same jawline, the same tired eyes, though then they had carried hope instead of regret. The baby swaddled in blue, Emma reached one tiny hand into the air. His throat closed. He tried to swallow, but nothing moved. Shadow pressed against his side, a steadying weight. The dog's eyes, deep and patient, seemed to say, "You know the truth. Stop running from it." Emma's voice was quiet but firm, stronger than a child should be. "Mama told me my dad's name. She told me to find him if she couldn't stay. She said he was Noah Ramirez, and that's you." The photograph blurred as his eyes filled. His knees gave, and this time he didn't fight it. He sank down onto the cold floor, the photo trembling in his grip. The weight of years, choices, absences, guilt crashed down on him, and he let it. Emma crawled forward on her small knees until she was right in front of him. She set her little hand on his, steadying the photo. "I found you," she whispered. Noah shook his head, broken. "No, you shouldn't even want to. I wasn't there. I left. His words broke off, choked. He pressed the heel of his hand against his eyes. Emma didn't flinch. She leaned closer, her voice steady. "But you're here now. That's what matters." Shadow leaned into them both, his big body bridging the space as though vowing to bind them together with fur and faith. For the first time in years, Noah let the tears fall. He clutched the photograph, then Emma's hand, then both at once, as if the act might stitch the years back together. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, voice hoarse. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there." Emma shook her head. "You don't have to be sorry. I just don't want to be alone anymore." The storm outside bellowed again, rattling the roof. And then, a sound not born of wind, a thud, a heavy bootstep in the corridor. Shadow's head snapped up. His growl deepened into a low thunder, hackles bristling. He moved between Emma and the door. Noah rose, the photograph still in his hand, his other hand going instinctively to the knife on his belt. His soldier instincts woke fully, but his heart beat with a new urgency. Protect her. Emma clutched the picture to her chest and whispered, "Daddy?" The word rooted him to the ground. He turned his head slightly, enough to see her small, hopeful face in the glow. He gave her a single, sharp nod. "Yes," he said. "I'm here." The door handle rattled. Shadow bared his teeth. And the storm outside went silent, as though the world itself was waiting for the next breath. The door handle rattled again, harder this time, then went still. Snow hissed through cracks in the frame like whispered threats. Noah Ramirez raised one hand in a signal to Shadow, "Steady, wait," while his other hand gripped the handle of the knife strapped to his belt. Emma Carter sat frozen on the floor, clutching the photograph to her chest. The paper trembled with her heartbeat. Her eyes never left Noah. Shadow lowered into a crouch, muscles taut, every fiber of him coiled and ready. His growl had dropped into a low hum, the sound of a storm gathering its strength. Noah moved silently toward the door, pressing his back to the wall beside it. He leaned close, ear angled, listening. What he heard chilled him more than the wind, deliberate breathing, close. Not the random scraping of metal in a storm. This was human. Someone waited on the other side. He mouthed the word, trouble. Emma's small voice broke the silence, soft but shaking. "Is it bad men?" Noah glanced back, the soldier in him speaking before the father could. "Could be. Stay low. Don't move unless I tell you." Emma ducked down, pressing her back against the wall, hugging the photo like a shield. The door shuddered once, twice, and then a voice came through, ragged, desperate. "Open up, please. I need food. Just a little food." Emma's head lifted. The voice was cracked, worn thin by hunger. "He sounds hungry," she whispered. Noah's jaw tightened. He knew that voice, or rather, he knew hundreds like it. In every war zone, every broken city, there had been people who wore desperation like a second skin. Some wanted help, some wanted blood. Shadow barked once, sharp and warning. The voice outside flinched, then turned angry. "I heard you. You've got heat in there. You've got food. Don't you hold out on me." The door shook violently. Emma gasped, shrinking back. Noah positioned himself squarely in front of the door, shoulders squared, knife gleaming faintly in the stove's light. "Not a step further," he called, voice iron. "You try to come through, you'll regret it." The noise stopped. The silence afterward was worse. Emma whispered, "What if he's telling the truth? What if he really is just hungry?" Noah's eyes flicked to her, and for a moment his hardened exterior cracked. He saw Maria in that question, saw her kindness, her refusal to let the world turn her bitter. His chest tightened. Shadow pressed closer to the door, nose working, ears pricked. Then, with a sudden lunge, he slammed his body against the frame and barked ferociously, the sound like thunder cracking the air. On the other side, footsteps stumbled back, then retreated into the storm, fainter and fainter, until the wind swallowed them whole. Only then did Noah ease his stance, knife still ready, but his eyes softer now. Emma peeked out from behind the photograph. "He left?" "For now," Noah said. He turned fully toward her, the knife lowering. "But not everyone will." Emma looked down at the photo, her voice so quiet it nearly broke. "Mama said you were strong enough to keep me safe." The words cut deeper than any blade. Noah went to one knee before her, the soldier gone, the man exposed. He reached out and rested his calloused hand over hers, steadying the photograph between them. "You listen to me," he said, voice trembling with the weight of a vow. "Whatever comes through that door, whatever storm hits us next, you won't face it alone, not anymore." Shadow sat beside them both, tail thumping once on the cold floor, as if to seal the promise. Outside, the storm screamed. Inside, a father's oath was born. The storm outside had not eased. If anything, it grew more vicious, pressing against the old train station like a living beast. The walls rattled, the windows screamed in their frames, and every gust threatened to tear the roof away. Inside, Noah Ramirez kept his back to the door, knife in hand, Shadow crouched at his side. Emma Carter huddled in the corner with the photograph clutched tight, her wide eyes following every movement. Minutes passed, then footsteps. Not one this time, but several, crunching over ice. Low voices murmured, too muffled to make out. Then a boot slammed into the door so hard the hinges cried. Shadow erupted in a deep, booming bark, teeth bared. Noah didn't flinch. "They came back," he muttered. Emma gasped. "The hungry man?" Noah shook his head grimly. Not just him. The next kick nearly tore the latch free. Splinters rained from the wood. Noah raised his knife higher, body squared. "Emma," he said without looking at her, "get behind the stove. Stay down, no matter what happens." She crawled quickly, tucking herself into the shadow behind the broken chair and the stove's small glow. Her heart hammered in her ears. She pressed the photo against her chest and whispered a single word. "Daddy!" The door exploded inward. 3 men stormed through, wrapped in heavy coats, faces hidden behind scarves. 2 carried rusted pipes, the third had a pistol gripped tight in shaking hands. Noah didn't hesitate. He surged forward with the force of a soldier who had lived through 100 raids. His knife slashed the first man's arm, sending the pipe clattering. Shadow leapt at the second, knocking him flat, jaws locking on his sleeve with a terrifying growl. The gunman froze, eyes wide, pistol aimed at Noah. His finger twitched on the trigger. "No!" Emma screamed, leaping from her hiding place. She held the photo high, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Don't hurt my daddy!" The word froze Noah as surely as it froze the man with the gun. The sound of it, "Daddy," was louder than the storm, louder than his own heartbeat. The hesitation lasted only a heartbeat, but it was enough. Shadow released the pinned man and lunged at the gunman, teeth sinking into his wrist. The pistol fired, deafening in the small room, the bullet sparking off the concrete wall. Noah closed the distance, slamming the man back against the doorframe, the knife at his throat. "Drop it!" he snarled. The gun clattered to the floor. The intruders stumbled, bleeding, beaten, retreating into the storm they'd come from. Noah kicked the pistol out of reach and slammed the broken door shut with his shoulder. He turned, chest heaving, ears ringing. Emma was still standing in the open, clutching the photograph, her little chest rising and falling in terrified gasps. Shadow padded back to her, whining softly, pressing his head against her side as if to ground her. Noah dropped to his knees in front of her, his knife falling from his hand. He gripped her shoulders. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, tears streaming. I prayed you'd stay. I said, 'Please, God, don't let Daddy leave me too.'" Her words cracked him wide open. He pulled her against him, holding her so tightly she squeaked, then loosened his grip, only enough to breathe her in. "I'm not leaving," he whispered fiercely into her hair. "Do you hear me? I'm not leaving you." Shadow circled them once, then lay down across the broken doorway guarding. The storm outside howled, but inside a prayer had been heard. And for the first time in years, Noah Ramirez believed in miracles again. The station smelled of gunpowder and snow. The broken door rattled in its frame, patched only by Shadow's massive body blocking the threshold. The storm clawed at the world outside, but in the corner of that forgotten room, something stronger than the wind was beginning to grow. Noah Ramirez still knelt on the cold floor, his arms wrapped tight around Emma Carter. She was trembling, clutching the photograph between them, as though afraid if she let go the truth would vanish. His own tears had soaked into her tangled brown hair, but he didn't care. For the first time in decades, he wasn't hiding the fact that he was breaking. "Emma," he whispered, his voice low and unsteady. "I should have been there. I should have raised you. Every day I didn't. It was me failing you. And your mama." Emma pulled back just far enough to see his face. Her eyes, red-rimmed but fierce, met his. "But you're here now," she said, stubborn as if she had inherited Maria's fire. "And I found you. That means I won." The words pierced him. He wanted to protest, to tell her she deserved more than scraps of time and broken promises, but Shadow whined softly and pressed his nose against Noah's arm. The soldier realized he was being reminded of something simple. The present moment was still a gift. Slowly, Noah reached under his shirt and pulled out the dented silver locket. He clicked it open, revealing the 2 faded pictures inside. Maria's face lit by sun, and a newborn, tiny features. He placed it gently into Emma's hand. "This was always yours," he said. His throat tightened. "I carried it because I didn't know how to carry you, but if you'll let me, I'll do it now, from this day on." Emma stared at the locket, then back at the photograph. The 2 pieces of proof, the paper she'd brought, the locket he'd carried, fit together like puzzle halves that had been separated too long. She reached up, placed her small hand against his weathered cheek, and whispered, "You don't have to prove it. I already knew. You're my dad." The word landed heavier than any medal he'd ever worn. He bowed his head, pressing his forehead against hers, and let the vow shape itself on his lips. "I will protect you with everything I am. I'll teach you, feed you, fight for you. I'll never run again. I swear it, Emma, on Maria's memory, on the years we lost, on the God I forgot how to pray to. I'm your father, and I'm not letting go." Emma's lips trembled into the first smile he had seen from her. She slipped the photograph into his hand. "Then you keep this now, because I don't need paper anymore. I have you." The locket, the photo, the girl. They were no longer fragments of a life he'd lost. They were his life now. Shadow shifted at the door, ears twitching. The storm was still wild, but there were no more footsteps. For now the night had given them peace. Emma leaned against Noah's chest, the locket hanging loose between them. "I'm tired," she murmured. He pulled his coat tighter around her, tucking her against his body as if to shield her from the whole world. "Rest, little star," he whispered. "I'll keep watch." And as the storm raged on, Noah Ramirez sat with his daughter in his arms, a vow burning in his heart like the first sunrise after endless night. Dawn broke slow and uncertain, like a wounded soldier learning to walk again. The storm had spent its fury through the night, and now the snow lay deep and quiet, blanketing the ruined station in white silence. The cold still bit hard, but the wind no longer screamed. It whispered. Inside, Noah Ramirez stirred from his watch. His eyes were red with exhaustion, but his body remained alert. Emma Carter lay curled against his chest, her breath steady and warm. She clutched the silver locket in one hand, even in sleep, as if she knew it was more than metal. It was a bridge between past and present. Shadow shifted at the door, ears flicking, muscles relaxing for the first time since the intruders had fled. His watchful eyes softened as sunlight pierced through cracks in the boarded windows, scattering faint rainbows across the icy floor. Noah's throat tightened as he looked down at Emma. In her face, he saw Maria, the same determined chin, the same stubborn spark, but also something new, something wholly her own, the faith to find him, against all odds. When Emma stirred awake, she blinked at the light. For a moment she looked disoriented, as though the calm confused her. Then her gaze landed on Noah, and she smiled faintly. "You stayed." Noah swallowed the ache in his chest and brushed her tangled hair from her eyes. "I told you I would, and I will. Every day from here on." Emma sat up, the locket swinging from her fingers. She looked at it, then at the faded photograph Noah still kept tucked in his palm. Carefully, she folded his fingers over the paper. "You keep it now," she said, "because I don't need it anymore." Her words undid him. He nodded once, unable to speak, and slipped the photograph into his jacket pocket, close to his heart. Shadow padded over and leaned his massive head against Emma's shoulder. She giggled softly, the sound fragile but real. She hugged the dog's neck, burying her face in his fur. "We're a family now," she whispered into his ear. Shadow's tail thumped against the floor in solemn agreement. Noah rose slowly, helping Emma to her feet. He draped his heavy coat around her thin shoulders, then shouldered his pack. "It's time we get out of this place. There's a town not far. We'll find shelter, food, people who can help us start again." Emma nodded eagerly, her small hand slipping into his. Her grip was weak but unyielding. Together, with Shadow leading, they stepped out of the broken station into the snow. The world was still harsh, still uncertain, but it no longer felt empty. The rising sun painted the drifts in gold and rose, light catching in Emma's hair as she walked beside Noah. She clutched the locket to her chest one last time before tucking it under her sweater. Noah paused, looking back at the station, the place where his life had cracked open and healed in the same night. He whispered a silent thank you to Maria, to the storm, to the God he hadn't spoken to in years. Then he looked forward again. Emma squeezed his hand. "Daddy?" He looked down, eyes soft. Yeah, little star. Her lips curved into a shy, certain smile. Let's go home. Noah Ramirez bent his head, pressing a kiss to her tangled hair. With his daughter at his side and shadow guarding their path, he stepped into the new day. The past was not erased, but the future was theirs to build, together.